Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to make this wire Kumihimo bracelet. And this is what it looks like. Obviously this is just the design that I've chosen to go with, but you can change it up if you want to. This is just showing you the technique. So if you want to learn how to make that, then stay tuned. And here are the things that you're going to need. For this you'll need your round Kumihimo disc, and then you'll need a selection of wires. In my case I'm using a 0.4mm gauge in silver colour, and that's a 26 gauge, and then I'm using a 0.5mm in this one, and that's a 24 gauge. I'm only using two different gauges just because that's what I have at hand, but they're close enough that it'll work anyway. But I do recommend, if you can, try and stick with the same gauge wire. And then you'll need your wire cutters to cut your wires with. So get your things together and then let's get started. And then the first thing you want to do is cut all your wires to the length that you want them to be. And mine are about 60 centimeters long. Obviously that all depends, how long they need to be depends on how long you want your final piece to be, but also what gauge wire you're using and that, so it's just a guideline really. Rather, if you're unsure, rather do a bit extra because you don't want to run out halfway through or something. And then because this is quite fine wire, what you'll want to do is each place on your disc, if I'll try and show you on here, where you have your notches. You normally put one cord in each notch when you're doing Kumihimo with cord. But because it's very fine wire, what you want to do is have several wires in place for one notch. So basically several wires replace one cord that you would normally use. So in my case, my coloured wire, I'm using 3 together. I can get them out like this. So these 3 are going to replace what would normally be used as one cord, and I'm using 2 of them, so you want basically 6 lengths of that. And then my silver ones, because it's slightly thinner, I'm using 4 lengths in place of each cord, and that's going to fill out the rest, so you want 24 lengths of your silver. And then you just want to secure all your wires in place before you can actually start working with them. What I usually do is I go to one end, gather all my wires together so they're roughly at the same length, because obviously you need to gather them together and secure them, otherwise your wires will go all over the place and you can't really start off your braid. So I get to this one end and I just basically loop it around all the wires together. There's no really specific ways, just so you can get them to stay together and be secure. And also so you have something to hold while you're beginning it. So something like this, just some form of wraparound or some form of knot on the end of your wire. And then you're ready to begin. So now you want to get your Kumihimo disc out and start placing your wires in place. So we'll do the same thing that we normally do when working with cord. So you have this end where you've got them all wrapped together. You stick that through your loop and then keep a hold of that on the other side. I just usually get it in between my fingers like this and keep hold of it. And now you want to start placing your wires. Obviously this is going to be a little bit more complicated than if you're just working with single cords, but just take your time and then get them placed into right positions. So for easiness I'm going to start with my coloured wire to get them out of the way. And those, remember I said I'm going to use 3 coloured wires in each notch in place of what would normally be one cord. So the first batch I'm going to grab and place to the one side. If you follow the dots on your disc, I'm going to place them right above the dot on this side. I'm going to find my other ones So just take your time to get your wires out and sort them so they don't tangle up too much. Like so. So I'm grabbing those three, the other coloured ones, and then placing them on the opposite side, again above that dot. So you have your two batches of coloured wires going to the sides. And now you want to place all the rest of your wires. So we now have our colours wide placed and they're out of the way. And the setup for this braid is quite simple actually. All we're going to do is follow the dots all the way around. So need to place the rest of them. So remember for this I said I was going to use 4 wires per notch. So I'll grab 4 of my silver wires, make sure you've got the right amount, untangle them from the rest, and then pull them out to the side and place them below the dot on the side, so right below where you place the coloured wire. And then again we'll do the same thing on the other side, so get 4 wires out, because you're working with wire, obviously it's a bit different than working with cord. It's a little bit more fragile because obviously you can get kinks and bends in it. So just take your time to avoid that. So I've freed up 4 wires here. So I'll bring them out to this side, place them in the notch below the coloured one on here, so below the dot. So you now have your 2 sides sorted. And then you want to grab another 4, in my case. You can use more or less wires if you want to. I'm just doing this because obviously I'm using 2 different gauges of wire just to try and equal it out as well. But you can also easily use more wires per notch if you want to. So I have another 4, grab them, put them at the top on this side of the dot, and then we want another 4 again. Free them from the rest. Make sure you've got the right amount that you've chosen. Bring them to the top, put them on the other side of the dot, so you now have the top filled up. And then grab 4, put them at the bottom, and grab the last 4 and put them on the other side of that dot. So you now have all your wires placed on the disc. And it's going to seem a little bit difficult, you have wires all over the place now, and that's also what's a bit more difficult to work with because wire has a bit of mind of its own compared to cord, and obviously you got to be careful not to poke yourself or poke anyone else that's near you. So just take your time and do it slowly and then it'll work out fine. So this is set up for your disc. So now to actually start making the braid. The way you do this is you start at the top and you have your 2 sets of wires, 1 on each side of the dot, and then you grab the one from the top right side, bring that down above and then out to the side onto the opposite side that you took it from and below the side ones. So that's your first one, and then you grab the other one from the top, do the same thing. That's on the left side, so you take it down, above, and then out to the right side. And below your 2 wires, your 2 sets of wires on here. So that's the top ones. So then you need to do your bottom ones. So you do the same thing basically. You now start on the left side, grab the one on the left side of the dot, bring it up, over, and out to the right side. Now putting it above all the other wires on here. Grabbing the other one that's on the right side of the dot, up, over, and out to the left side, above the other ones. So always when you grab something, you go from one side and up and over to the other side. So that's your first ones. Now what you need to do is you need to move out to the sides. So you grab If you try and ignore the two you just placed on each side, just focus on the two inner ones, so the ones right by your dots. You grab the one above, which in my case is a coloured one, and that's on top of the dot, so you grab that, bring it up, over and down, like so, and then bring the other one up, over and up, because that came from below the dot, so we're bringing it up. And then the other side, do the same thing. Grab my coloured one that's above the dot, bring it up, over and down. And then the other one that's below the dot, we're bringing it up. Like so, and that's basically your first step around. Now we just need to move the side cords in to basically get back to the very original position. So you're just moving them into place right next to the dots, like so. And that's your first go around. So now we need to start again, and you basically just do the exact same thing, but obviously your wires are just changing places throughout. So we go back to what we started before, take the top one, your top right one, bring it down and out to the left, below. Get the top left one, bring it down, out to the right, below them. Like so. And then we need to go to the bottom. So we take the bottom left one, left side of the dot, bring it up, over and out to the right side. And then we take the right one, bring it up, over and out to the left side. So we just continue like we were doing. Keep in mind, you always go from one side to the opposite side, you don't stay on the same side. So we're now back to the sides again. So focus on the two middle ones right next to the dot. Get the top one, bring it down, over and all the way down on this side of the dot, on the left side. Grab the other one that's below the dot, bring it over and up and on the left side of the dot. And then back to here, the other side, bring the one above the dot, up and then down. Place it on the right side of the bottom dot, and then this one below the dot, bring it up, over and then stay on the right side of that dot. Now we need to move our side wires in again. And we're now back to the starting position again. So we just keep going like this. We start from the beginning again. So you bring the top right one up, out to the left, below, and the top left one out to the right and below. Like so. As you go, make sure you try and keep your wires nice and straight, you know, as straight as you can. Just make sure to avoid kinks and bends, and if you do get any kinks, rather try and like smooth them out before you just continue, because that's when you can weaken the wire. If you pull where it's like kinked or bent a little bit, you can weaken the wire. So we need to go to the bottom now. We'll grab the bottom left one, up, over and out to the right, above all the others, and the bottom right one, up, over and out to the left, above all the others. And now we're back to the sides, so we need to get into the starting position again. So you focus on the two middle ones. In my case now I'm grabbing my coloured one that's above the dot, bring it up, over and down, stay on the left side of the dot, bring that one below the dot, up, over and up, and stay on the left side. And then bring on the other side the coloured one above the dot, up, over and down on the right side, and then the one below the dot, up, over and up, and stay on the right side. And again, we now need to move our side wires into the dot. So that's basically all there is to it. You continue like this. Just do the same thing throughout until you reached the length that you want it to be. So I've now gotten a little bit further along, and then you'll start to see a braid coming out of the back, and it will look something like this. So this is one side, and then the other side it looks slightly different, but you can obviously use both sides. You can choose which one you prefer. So that's how it's roughly going to turn out, obviously depending on what you're using. But just keep going, and then I'll show you how to finish it off. So I've now finished off my whole braid with the wire, gotten as far as I could with the wires I had left. And I've taken it off my disc, and don't worry about having to put knots or anything on the other end, because obviously this is wire, so it'll just hold its shape. Whereas if you use cord, you would have to put knots or tie it off in some way. But you don't have to with wire. So what we need to do now is finish it off, the ends, so we can actually use it. And I'm going to show you how to do this now. And I'm going to show you on one end because it's the same you do on both ends. So you have your finished braid here, and this is where it stops. And obviously you want to find out where you want to use it from. It might be that at the end it's a little bit loose or it's a bit out of shape somewhere. So that's where you can decide where you want it to start from. And then you want to get your wire cutters out and basically cut off all your excess wires. Now I'm going to start cutting from around here. And just do a bit at a time, go across doing a bit at a time. To get rid of all your wires so you have a neat end, like so. And then what we need to do is finish it off using these ribbon ends. And obviously you want to get one that fits the size of your braid. And I have found one here that I think fits quite nicely, because I don't like it being too big so it sticks out too much on the sides. But before I use that, what I will usually do is, because you're going to use the ribbon ends, and I'm also going to put glue in there so it's going to be extra secure, but because I'm working with wire, to avoid any risk of them slipping out even though you're using glue, I always like to just basically roughen up the ends. So I just take my flat nose plier, get in there, get in on all the ends. On the outsides I always make sure to bend them inwards because you don't want them sticking out of your ribbon end. So like so. It's not much at all, it's literally just like a couple of millimeters of that. And just bend them in different directions, the very ends of your wires. Because this is just basically to give the glue something to grab onto. Give it a bit more friction so the wires can't just slip out. This doesn't have to be any neat at all or anything like that, just actually the rougher the better. And then when I've done it, I just go over it and just flatten it down. Just make sure everything is roughly level so that you don't have any sticking out much further than the others. Flatten it down. And when you feel like you've done this enough, there's enough roughness there, now is when you want to then get your glue out. So I'm going to grab my ribbon end, one of them, the one I'm going to use on this end. So I have it ready, and then I'm going to grab my glue, which for this kind of thing I always like to use the E6000. I just find that very good for this kind of thing, and I've not had anything come undone yet after doing this and using this. So I do recommend trying this if you don't have it already. So I do open it and I get a toothpick, because you can't really do it straight from the tube, that's a bit difficult. And also you want to be careful how much you put in there. Put your glue away again. And then you have your glue on the toothpick, and you get your ribbon end and just place your glue on the inside of it. Make sure you don't have too much, because you don't want it soaking in glue, because then when you clamp it down it's going to come all squeezing out, which you don't really want. You just need enough in there to be able to grasp onto the wires. Coat all the sides and down at the bottom, like so. That's about good. And then normally when I use cord I would just put my cords in there and then clamp down, but when I'm using wire I like to just get a bit extra glue. Again, careful don't get too much, so you only want to get a little bit for each thing. And I always like to put a bit of glue on my actual ends of the wires as well, to make sure that the glue goes in between the wires. That's why you want to kind of roughen them up, so you can get the glue in around and in all the spaces that you created with the wire. And that's going to then help to grasp onto the ribbon end as well. So just put a bit around, make sure it gets in. That's why it's quite good using a toothpick, you can get into the little spaces, like so. You have both ready, and you get your ribbon end. You place the end of your Kumihimo braid inside the ribbon end, hold it where you want it to go, get your flat nose pliers, and you want to start squeezing down the ribbon end. And you want to do this a bit gently. You don't want to just go on one side, squeeze it down all the way, and then the other side squeeze it down. That can deform it. So just do a little at a time, go back and forth, getting it tighter and tighter, making sure that while you're doing it, it stays where you want it to be. Because that's why if you do it a little at a time, you still have a bit of time to then maneuver it if it's gone out of shape or out of place. And then this is pretty tight now. So if you're happy with where it is, I usually just come in from the other side and just clamp down as well. Make sure the ends are nicely clamped down. Like so. Now you have that ribbon end attached, and this should definitely not go anywhere. I haven't had any of these come undone yet when using wire. And then obviously you want to determine how long you want this to be. So you measure that out, take into account that you need to attach a clasp. So you need to leave space for that as well. And figure out where you want to cut it, and then just do exactly the same thing. And then all you do with your ends is you attach your jump rings and your clasp, and then that's it. And you can obviously choose to use whichever side you want. So that's how you do this. So I hope you enjoyed that, and thank you very much for watching.